This episode of Scale's Internal Memoranda was brought to you by Visi Media. Visi Media, make your IT work for you with Human First Business.
Freddie Bentham, the 22nd of September, 1879. Pouring the tea. I've never been the sort of fellow who struggles to look his past self in the eye and cry, "Foolish blackguard!" I am beginning to wonder if perhaps I did not fully realise what kind of situation I was throwing myself into. The gang is now complete, so far as I am concerned. We hustle over to Mrs. Darling's tea shop to have a natter. I begin to describe the sorts of things I want to use this little band of ours for. Everyone seems awfully keen on the one hand, and yet somehow rather distracted on the other. I am, admittedly, rather distracted myself. What with the wonderful array of teas Mrs. Darling is advertising on her chalkboard. It seems that upon the board, the beautiful chalky calligraphy of the tea titles are mostly stricken through with a blue chalk. Something about it has niggled at me. Isaac has noticed this as well. Asta picks up the little menu on the table and begins poring over it with a little excited giggle, emitting from her every now and again. For his part, Silver seems to give barely a moment's thought to the room or the decor. His furtive glances dart here and there about the room. His military mind seems to be assessing all the exits, and the team's exposure, and the possible hiding places, and where the staircases might be, and other tactical data. Cassidy picks up the table number, a wooden block with a metal spike driven into it with an ornate gilt metal 5 inlaid at the top. The table number has been handcrafted, and I imagine Cassidy sees all sorts of things in the metal workmanship I cannot perceive. I continue to explain the heady concoction of plans and ideas that I have. The gang both listens and pontificates collectively. A tea boy with gangly legs strides awkwardly by, and as he zips past, I chiroo him over to us, affecting Federico's customary Italian drawl as I do. "Ragazzo," Bentani says cheerfully, "why on earth Nonna crossed out all these wonderful teas?" The boy responds with a gormless vacant expression on his face. Apparently, this is the first time he has noticed there is anything crossed out on the board. The shock has taken him quite by surprise. "I'll get Mrs. Darling for you," he says after a few seconds of trying to work out how to say "I don't know" with any legitimacy whatsoever. Darling puffs over to us, looking to all the world like the idea of actually conversing with customers is the very last thing she has planned to do today. As she sidles over, I notice Darling mask her frustrated expression. Play this one as the Federico Bentani, the opera star, I decide. "Ah, Nonna!" Federico blares as she comes over. Bentani stands and clutches the woman by her shoulders and presses his cheek up against her opposing cheek and kisses the space next to her face. He then thrusts her shoulders backwards with a practised vigour. Then he pulls Darling back to him with the same veracity, and now their opposite cheeks touch. Again, he kisses the air next to her face. He repeats this, and the air next to Darling's face has now been kissed 4 times. The woman is in shock at the foreignness of Freddie's persona and the un-Englishness of his greeting. The Scales crew see how much the concealed Freddie is enjoying the ruse. The team share a smile, pleased to be in on the joke of Freddie's alarming uncorking of the Maestro Bentani. "Join us, favore," he bellows, dramatically waving a hand to indicate the last remaining empty seat at their table. Unsure as to whether or not she has an option in this request, she sits. "How might I help you, gentlemen? Milady." Isaac's eyes fire over to Cassidy. A single crease forms in Silver's brow, and his pupils dart over to Darling's face, before resuming their security checks. Cassidy, who has just licked the table number to get a better reading on the makeup of the alloy from which the thing has been made, looks like she has just walked naked into a room of strangers and freezes. The table number slowly sinks back under the table, but Cassidy neglects to pull her tongue back into her head. She has sat with several of the Scales members looking at her. Cassidy has not been listening to the conversation, so she has no idea why everyone is staring. Apparently, the girl has never had this kind of attention before. "Sorry," intones Darling reluctantly. "Ladies, I didn't see you there, miss." Cassidy shakes her head and, tongue still poking out, says, "It's no problem." Asta is looking at Cassidy. Asta raises a teal-varnished fingernail, but lightly taps her own chin. Cassidy sees this, gets the message, and, reptile-like, the tongue slips back behind her teeth. Asta gives Cassidy a little motherly nod, and blinks once, slowly. "Miss Asta needs her oolong, Mrs. Darling," Isaac coos, "but it appears we've come to the only tea shop in London in which tea is the one commodity not on offer." Cassidy sniggers, and I notice in that winning smile a hitherto unseen side of this quiet little creature. Hidden depths, I think. Cassidy London is a woman with very hidden depths. At Isaac's mention of an absence of Oolong, Adelaide's head whips from London to the chalky menu, and her little cherry cheeks rise in red fury. What is the meaning of this, Mrs. D? It is only now that I reflect Asta and Darling will, of course, know one another, at least a little. Darling's tea shop is located in a relatively nice part of London. It has a wonderful prominence and gets the sun at exactly the right time in the afternoon to be pleasant but not stifling, even this late in September. It is located on the High Street, which is a prominent thaumatological locale. Anyone in the know is aware that this is where the magical folk go to collect their wares. With that prominence comes a mixed bag of society. It is places like this which rise and fall in popularity all too regularly. Mrs. Darling sits down, looking sullenly at Lady Asta, and beckons us all to lean in. It appears that she has a story to tell. F.B. Isaac, but you've written it. I don't want to steal your thunder, darling. Well, I can do. Well, I'll give it a try. If you don't like it, then you can come in here and read it yourself, all right? Or Adelaide can have a go. Her voice is marvellous. Right, I'll give it a go. All right, yeah. Whenever you're ready. No, I'm not going to do your voice. I shall just do mine. No, I'll offend you if I try and do your voice, Isaac. It's not a problem. No, I'll just do mine. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Ready? Okay. Isaac Wiseman, the 21st of September, 1879. An Unbalanced Blend, Issue 1. For the benefit of the reader, I, Isaac Alberto Mercutio Wiseman, will simply refer to myself as Isaac in the third person, even though I am the one transcribing these events. I hope you find what is written to be either enlightening, educational, or perhaps entertaining. These are the events of what I know happened to the association called Society's Correctional Association for Ludicrously Extreme Situations, or Scales, and its associates during one of its formative days. The newly formed association, Scales, had been negotiating a place to set up their base of operations in the Darling Tea House. A charming new establishment with pleasant and welcoming decor, with the glorious smells of a wide range of teas, pastries, and other confectionaries that can soothe and invigorate both body and mind. However, Mrs. Narrated Darling, of the Darling Tea House, is in need of a favour. A number of her stock deliveries have either been tampered with, skimmed, or are completely missing. It's not just hers, but several Thaumaturgical Guild merchant shops that operate in the area are having the same problem. I personally believe that any person interfering in the great British pastime of drinking tea deserves nothing less than a good flogging, regardless of station. The associates ask one of the other vendors on the street, a Mr. Halverson, what issues he is experiencing. Like Mrs. Darling, several deliveries either have vastly inferior goods, fewer goods have arrived than were invoiced for, or are completely missing. Looking at Halverson's invoices, a common factor is identified. An ornate J stamp is present on all invoices of the questionable deliveries. Miss London skillfully replicates the J symbol, as the newly formed team cannot take Halverson's paperwork away with them, and the team may need it for future reference. The Scales team see the delivery man and question him about what he knows, which, unfortunately, is nothing more than from where he picks the goods up and who he works for, a nobleman by the name of Leopold Winter, who is the dockmaster. Thankfully, the delivery man is also kind enough to take them there in his cart. However, Lady Asta insists on taking a taxi, as is proper for a person of her station. After an uneventful journey, the Scales associates arrive at the docks, where the goods are sorted for delivery. The docks consist of a large area for the ships to port, several buildings, including the dockmaster's offices, several warehouses, and the East India Trading Company's EITC's headquarters. Along the edge of the docks is a procession of market stalls and street urchins selling their goods and services. The air here is foul with the smell of spoiled food that didn't keep long enough during transport, or was simply discarded because it was deemed not worth the effort to sell. Federico Bentani enters the dockmaster's office building, which is a drab but functional place, and requests to see the dockmaster. The receptionist at the desk informs Bentani that the scales team will have to wait outside while she tries to find the dockmaster. Due to the sensitive documents in the room, Bentani cannot be left to rummage alone. Bentani protests, but after finding this fruitless, joins his compatriots outside. Reunited, Bentani, Silver and London take in their surroundings, trying to glean out how things operate around here in a hope to find common factors between the tempered goods. Isaac believes that perhaps following the chain of logistics might yield something and asks Lady Astor if perhaps she might be willing to play the role of Miss "Of course I meant to be here," to help them gain access to one of the warehouses, to see where the crime may have been committed. They speak to several people, including a warehouse supervisor called Jim, and ascertain that it is unlikely that any tampering is happening here. Isaac and Lady Astor also find out that before some of the goods land in warehouses, they are processed in the EITC building, which has its own private military force protecting it. The two believe that perhaps their new colleague, Dick Silver, might be helpful in entering the EITC building due to his extensive military background, and they head back to the Dockmaster Winter's offices. 10 minutes later, Maestro Bentani meets that self-same dockmaster, Leopold Winter, an almost comically foppish man whose mere presence is irksome to Bentani. At first, Bentani isn't having much luck in convincing Winter to reveal any information about the thefts, but that changes once he drops Lady Astor's family name. Mr. Winter's reaction to the name is surprisingly that of obvious and severe dread. Mr. Winter reaches down to one of the drawers in his desk. Bentani, concerned that Winter might be having a fight-or-flight response and perhaps reaching for a weapon, chooses to de-escalate the situation, saying, "If you're looking to make yourself a drink, I'll have one too." While saying this, Freddy readies a concertinaed hand fan, which is actually a covert weapon containing a razor-sharp blade concealed along one edge. Thankfully, the weapon isn't necessary, as Winter instead produces a ledger. He leaves it on the desk and then nervously states, "Yes, that's a good idea. Why don't I go and make us some?" Indicating that he will leave, so the Scales associates can read the ledger in their own time, privately, ensuring also that he can later claim no knowledge about the situation. However, Bentani is concerned that Winter will flee the scene entirely or come back with protection, so insists Winter stay in the office. Bentani calls for his colleagues, Dick Silver and Cassidy London. During this time, outside Winter's office building, Dick Silver makes a discovery. Dotted around the docks are branding stamps on several crates. These bear an uncanny resemblance to the ornate J symbol seen previously on Halverson's invoices back in the High Street. In fact, under more scrutiny, the ornate J isn't a J at all, but an incomplete depiction of a fishing hook on a man's hand. Cassidy seems annoyed with herself for not having noticed this, but I note, if she hadn't previously and so expertly replicated the J insignia from Halverson's invoices, Dick would have had no basis for comparison in the first place. As they chat, Silver and London hear Bentani's yelling summons. Back inside the office, Bentani, Silver and London look through what they now know to be a ledger. They try to discern any connection or pattern, or the fishhook symbol even, on the goods that were interfered with. Unfortunately, they can make neither head nor tail of the many columns of text the ledger contains. Thankfully, Miss London is able to transcribe a copy of the ledger's final and most recent pages, dated around the time Mrs. Darling has reported having the stock issues. Bentani, Silver and London leave Winter's building and stop in at a nearby drinking stall just outside the dock. They deliberate and review their findings, waiting for their remaining companions with a modicum of comfort. Lady Astor and Isaac return to Winter's offices to regroup with their companions. Though the pair have not yet found where the crimes had been committed, they had at least narrowed the search area. However, they now have another small mystery. Where are the other associates? Miss Astor seems to slightly panic for a moment, concerned that she and Isaac may have been deserted. Fortunately, Isaac's keen eyes quickly spot the other members at the stall, and they step over to them. Now reunited, the Scales team exchange their tales and pool the information they have gathered so far. Whilst reviewing the ledger, and despite Lady Astor's brilliant mind, she cannot understand what is hidden in the pages of the ledger either. As soon as Isaac looks at the ledger's codified pages, however, he instantly sees the problem. Some folks who deal in shady practices and who are in need of a ledger to keep track of things often make two such documents. One can be freely shown to the authorities and presents at least a veneer of authenticity, helping the bookkeeper avoid any unwanted consequences. The other ledger is the true ledger, which details what is actually happening within the business. Whilst the Scales gang are reading the true ledger, it is masked with a code which requires a cipher and a key to decrypt it. Dick's discovery about the repetitive use of the ornate J fishhook being part of the company brand reminds Isaac of an old carnival scam in which circus employees would mark their customers with chalk to indicate their targets to fellow criminals. If you see a chalk mark on your coat or bag that wasn't there before you left home, please seek somewhere safe immediately, as there is a good chance you or your valuables are in danger. With all this in mind, Isaac shares his belief that there is now little doubt left to him that the scandal is far greater than they had imagined. This isn't just some troublemaking sailors and dock workers pilfering a few loads of cargo to supplement their income. This is organised crime. Maestro Federico Bentani ponders this revelation and continues that if simple persuasion or intimidation isn't enough to fill in Scales' missing parts of the problem, then perhaps a little old-fashioned bribery might do the trick. The team are off scouting for trinkets and knickknacks, so Bentani sidles up to the barman to question him. If you know anything about the scam going on around here, I could find my way to mislay this lovely new shilling here. The vendor says he couldn't possibly help, but if Federico wanted a coaster for his drink, then it would cost him about 1 shilling. Bentani knows what the vendor is hinting at and buys a coaster, tucking it up into his sleeve as he returns to the Scales' table. Moments later, Bentani looks at the coaster. On it is the number 7 written in large print. As he looks up to the large painted numbers on the warehouses, he reads across the row of visible buildings. Warehouse 4, Warehouse 5, Warehouse 6. So near and yet so far, Isaac, thinks the maestro. Bentani now has reason to suspect that the scene of the crimes may actually be in the neighbouring warehouse just beyond his view, round that corner in Warehouse 7. Meanwhile, the other Scales members are enjoying a brief respite, perusing the goods of neighbouring stalls. One such stall stands out in particular as having suspiciously diverse and high-quality range of goods. Even more ominous is the fact that the stall operator, called Nancy, has known Isaac since he was a baby. Perhaps more importantly, Nancy once worked for Isaac's parents. NB, from Isaac Wiseman. To add context, I fear I need to tell you more about my parents, but to keep it brief, they would call themselves hustlers. I and many others would call them, more accurately, criminal scum. I would also like it known that I, Isaac A.M. Wiseman, while being the son of Toilet Wiseman, am not, nor have I ever been, one of the young criminals my parents used to do their dirty work, known to many as Toilet's kids. This is a misconception that's haunted me for many years and still does to this day. I will clarify more if necessary in future issues. Also, if Toilet Wiseman is ever able to read this, I firmly believe that the reason my grandmother's named you Toilet is because she could tell you are full of excrement from the day you were born. I, however, think that's an insult to plumbing, because at least an actual toilet helps prevent disease, whereas you are one. Nancy's is not a meeting Isaac welcomes, especially in front of his current employer, Lady Astor. Isaac, not wanting to cause a scene, approaches Nancy and embraces her in a seemingly affectionate hug. During said hug, he whispers in her ear that he needs to know from where she is getting her goods. Nancy's reaction to this is to accuse him of doing something inappropriate during the hug, which infuriates Isaac. Isaac calms himself to avoid escalation and to keep the other associates from descending on Nancy. Whilst he calms himself, Isaac fails to notice Nancy whispering something into a nearby street urchin's ear. Isaac does, however, notice Dick Silver's eyes go wide as the military man observes the little boy run off, away from Nancy, who he has obviously observed interacting with Isaac. Silver correctly assesses what must have happened and gives chase to the street urchin. The child proves too elusive and darts through the gap in the stone wall further up the hill into which the dockyards are set. I.A.M. Wiseman. N.B. by I.A.M. Wiseman. Where was the urchin going? And to do what? What does Nancy know that she isn't telling? What does the fishing hook brand mean? What could be the cipher to the ledger? What will our protagonists find out in Warehouse 7? All these questions and more to be answered in the following issue of An Unbalanced Blend.
That was an episode of Scales' Internal Memoranda. If you like what you saw and wish to see more, please press the like and subscribe button. Also, thank you Visi Media for providing the skills and tools needed for the making of this show.